You're listening to Business Extra coming from the Nationals newsroom in Abu Dhabi. I'm your host, Kelsey Warner. And today I'm joined by Amr Aidi, head of marketing and operations at Hub 71. A little more than 4 years ago, Abu Dhabi committed 1 billion dirhams to support technology startups in a dedicated hub to diversify its economy. And a little more than 4 years later, we're sitting here. Amr, hi, nice to see you.
Hello. Hi, Kelsey. It's good to see you too. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Thanks for joining me. And it's just a week after you guys had a fairly big event down there at Al Maria Island in your shiny office spaces. We had Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, the ChatGPT creator, on stage, hosted by Hub 71. And before we kind of dig in to what you guys are up to these days, talk to me about the Sam Altman of it all and why Hub 71 extended an invite while he's on his big global tour.
Yeah, thanks for that. So honestly, I'd say it's probably one of the more exciting events that I've ever been involved in. And the fact that we were able to get Sam Altman to come to Abu Dhabi, to ADGM, and to speak to us in a Q&A format was really, really exciting. And to have him just on stage and, that brand association between Hub 71, putting my marketing hat on and Sam Altman was absolutely phenomenal. Honestly, we're still buzzing, from all the energy and excitement that event really generated for us.
I mean, it was an open forum, open Q&A. People got to ask questions. It did feel really organic, and I really felt there a sense of community. There was a lot of backslapping, a lot of hugs, a lot of VCs rubbing elbows with founders, rubbing elbows with the sovereign wealth fund guys. It all kind of felt very Abu Dhabi. It felt very local community, but a real test case for the success of the Hub 71 community that you've created there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So look, honestly, leading up to the event, we obviously wanted to understand from him what he was more comfortable with. We had proposed a moderated sort of session or format, and he came back and just said, nope, he just wants to get on stage and be open to any questions from the community. So the fact that he was willing to do that, I think, was really, really exciting.
So, as I mentioned at the top, Hub 71 started with 1 billion dirham kind of endowment 4 years ago. It's a government-backed sovereign wealth fund. Mubadala is also involved, and it's a community of tech startups, investors, government, and corporate entities, all housed at Al Maria Island. You guys have been around a little more than 4 years. When you started, the goal was 80 to 100 startups in 3 to 5 years. You've attracted more than 200. About $500 million in VC funding housed under your roof. Talk to me a little bit, though, about state of play today at Hub 71 and what has been built. And if founders are listening elsewhere in the world, what might they find when they walk through your doors these days?
Well, I think that, what's become very clear to us just in terms of the quality of startups that we've been able to attract over the past, couple of years has really, really shot up. And I think that's just testament to the value proposition that a lot of founders and startups see from being here in Abu Dhabi, specifically in Hub 71. I think when we launched back in 2019, there was still a lot of trial and error at that stage, and everything was relatively new. But now that we've solidified the whole journey for founders in terms of being plugged into a company building program, and then giving them access to corporate partners, VCs, and government agencies and the regulators. I think that value proposition now has become very exciting and interesting for startups from all around the world. So we have about 48 different nationalities, when you come here to our space, you see the diversity, which is always very exciting for us, and things are only getting more exciting by the day, I'd say.
So when it began, the ambition was really to put Abu Dhabi on the map as a leading ecosystem for startups really that had global ambitions. So if you had and frankly, it was around the time that Mubadala was heavily involved in SoftBank's Vision Fund 1. So some of the idea was actually that the Vision Fund portfolio companies would come and find a foothold in the MENA region for expansion. Some of that has happened, but a lot of the portfolio companies now within Hub 71 are outside of the Vision Fund remit. It's gone beyond that initial kind of DNA. But it was the idea that Abu Dhabi, in order for it to realize its potential as a knowledge-based economy, its diversification away from oil, all of that, it really needed to put itself on the map for startups. And so you're headed to Amsterdam tomorrow because Abu Dhabi is ranking now. It's a globally ranked. It's kind of finding its way, going up the rankings. Talk to me a little bit about the Global Startup Ecosystem report from the Startup Genome organization.
Yeah, so I mean, if for some of your listeners who aren't familiar with the Startup Genome Report, I'd like to. I mean, I basically call it the North Star of data and insights into startup ecosystems all around the world. And I think that the guys at the Startup Genome Report have done a phenomenal job today at compiling information and data and insights into every ecosystem across the planet. So a funny story is before I joined Hub 71 about 15, 16 months ago, the CEO of Hub 71 kind of gave me the task of making sure that I work closely with the Startup Genome Report team to ensure that Abu Dhabi was fairly represented because last year we fell off the rankings, so we weren't featured in the top 100 emerging ecosystems. And I don't think that was because of the fact that I don't think that it was reflective really of the state of our ecosystem here. I think it was just that there wasn't sort of a central point in Abu Dhabi today that was responsible for collecting information or relevant information today and uploading it into the Deal Room platform, which is a platform that they use over there. So I was given the task today of being that central point today on behalf of Abu Dhabi and the wider ecosystem. And as a result of that, I think the results speak for themselves.
So it was a data story. They needed the data. You needed to dig into the data. Okay, so what did you find? I mean, the other thing too about Hub 71 is what it offers startups when they come here. It's health insurance, it's housing, it's access to venture capital, not
Right.
necessarily guaranteed access to venture capital funding, but an invitation to pitch and share space with VCs.
Right. So, I mean, so other than just funding, I think the value proposition today has evolved. So initially, when we launched 4 years ago, our flagship program, which is called the incentive program, was essentially, a certain amount of money that you would get in a digital wallet that you could use for housing and office space and insurance. But what we've done is that we've evolved that proposition today to whereas you have access to anything that a startup would typically need. So from financial services, legal services, performance marketing, UI, UX. So anything that a startup would typically need to kind of survive and thrive, that's how we sort of evolved that. And in terms of access to VCs, I mean, so that's again another one of the key advantages that a lot of startups today can benefit from. So not only do you just come into Hub 71 and get plugged into a program, but you have access to right now we have, I think, is it over 32 active VCs and investors within our community as well. Another platform that we launched very recently, late last year, was called Tech Barza, which is our family office platform where we have brought in over 30 family offices to kind of get closer to the whole startup ecosystem as well. And that's just a series of initiatives that we do on a regular basis where we showcase the impact and our portfolio of startups to them. So that's also worked well. So there's always constant efforts within Hub 71 to bring the investor community closer to our ecosystem, and I think that's fared quite well for us.
How are you measuring success at Hub 71?
I'd say definitely. I mean, there are a lot of different metrics that we look at. So obviously, the quality of startups today, the funds that they've managed to raise, traction, revenue. Those are just some of the things that we look at, and obviously our ability today to retain talent within Abu Dhabi. So today, where I'm very much focused on retention as a key KPI for me and my function that I look after. So we don't want startups to come in today and to kind of benefit from the incentive program for a year and then to kind of move to a different city. We want to really retain them in Abu Dhabi. So we're constantly looking at ways of how we can make Abu Dhabi a sticky place for a lot of these founders. And I think that we've been quite successful so far, especially when we look at some of our top performing startups.
What are some of the things that you're doing to make it a bit stickier?
Well, I think that a lot of collaborations with the free zones, for example, has been quite exciting. So for with Masdar, we signed an agreement with them to whereas we can graduate a lot of our climate tech startups into Masdar today. So after you sort of go through the program and after your incentive is over after a year. There's a clear journey today to go into to Masdar to get plugged into their ecosystem where you'll have access potentially to a fund over there and to a more competitive, office space, and then obviously access to their kind of a community of corporate partners as well.
I want to stick on talent for a little while longer and ask you
Sure.
about. So, I mean, Abu Dhabi, the UAE, generally, it can be a satellite campus for business development marketing and not so much a place where people will house their technical development teams. What are you guys doing at Hub 71 to make sure that you're actually attracting kind of the skills, talent, expertise that Abu Dhabi really is vying for?
Well, I mean, I think, look, honestly, I mean, attracting talent today is a global issue, and it's not just an Abu Dhabi issue. I think that talent today within the tech space is limited globally, and I think that when you tap into every ecosystem, and if you look at the Startup Genome report, there's always a fight for talent. So what I think Abu Dhabi has done really well right now is trying to focus on growing homegrown talent, right? So if you just look at AI, since we're on the topic of Sam Altman earlier, I mean, if you look at the Mohammed bin Zayed Artificial Intelligence University, I mean, I think they just graduated their first batch a couple of months ago or last month. I mean, you see that there are efforts today to kind of, develop homegrown talent. But we are obviously, on the constant lookout for, that talent globally to come to Abu Dhabi and to keep them, to retain them here. Now, in reality today, if you have a startup that has, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, developers, a lot of them are not going to be based here in Abu Dhabi. It's no secret that it's an expensive place, right? It's an expensive city. I think that as long as you have kind of the key resources available here in Abu Dhabi, along obviously with the founders and the broader team, then that's okay for us. And I think that gradually you will start to see a lot more homegrown talent here, as opposed to always having to rely on just attracting talent from abroad.
When you look to other cities, what are you learning from them? And can you kind of name names in terms of the cities that you guys are looking to that have actually created the ecosystems that Abu Dhabi would like to replicate?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that we're in the heart. So look, we have these conversations all the time here internally at Hub 71. I don't think that we're really trying to replicate anyone. I think that you look at a lot of the successful, cities around the world when it comes to, just their startup ecosystems. I think we look at, you take bits and pieces that are relevant to us, and that think that since we're on the topic of Amsterdam, I think what they've managed to do, for example, over the past 10, 15 years is very exciting, and I think that there's a similar story to Abu Dhabi in terms of where we are today and kind of where they were over a decade ago. You look at Singapore, obviously is also quite relevant. Yeah, look, I mean, it's really a kind of a mix and match. There isn't one city I'd say that we'd look at that we want to replicate. I think it's just looking at all the advantages that we have as Abu Dhabi and the resources that we have, and then just putting something together that makes sense for us.
When you think about the marketplace right now, it is a weird time. There's been a lot of value destruction, valuations corrected. We've been talking about recession fears now for a year and a half. The run on Silicon Valley Bank, a bank collapsing overnight. These are weird, heady times we're in, not to mention kind of the massive numbers of layoffs we've seen. Ibrahim Ajami, who's the head of Mubadala Ventures, called it recently just kind of a hangover from the pandemic that we're kind of just correcting from kind of that ebullience we had a few years ago. But where does Hub 71 sit in this moment? Is this an opportunity for you guys? Are you feeling the depression? What is Hub 71 feeling in this time?
I'd say actually that we're in a prime position today to be able to attract a lot of startups today that are looking for new geographies to expand to because there might be a correction kind of in their respective, countries or areas where they operate in. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that there's a lot more interest. And let me just give you an example here, an interesting data point. So on this last cohort that we just closed, we received over 1,400 applications. And that's twice the amount of applications that we received from the previous cohort. And then when we look at the geographies, and the geographies are definitely expanding as well. So there's a lot more interest today from key geographies. And again, these aren't startups that haven't fared well. They are startups that have shown traction and growth. And I think that they're just looking for new geographies. So to answer your question, I think that we're in a prime position right now to take advantage of this slowdown that's happening globally.
I want to ask you, my last question is around just sector specific startups. So Hub 71 over indexes on the fintech of it all. You've got at least 40 fintechs housed where you're at, 28 health tech and life sciences, 14 ed tech, 12 mobility and logistics. Those are kind of the highest ranking. You guys did mostly stay out of the crypto space, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of AI or Web3 or metaverse mentioned in your list of startups. Can you just talk about who you're attracting these days and just the tech discipline of it all? What are people specializing in?
Sure. So, I mean, I think that, we've always said that, Hub 71 is sector agnostic, but at the same time, we have to always ensure that, our efforts are aligned with, with obviously economic priorities, right? So, as you rightfully mentioned, fintech is obviously important, health tech, ed tech, mobility, climate tech, and food tech. Now, just to go back to your point on Web3 crypto, so as you might recall, we did launch our digital assets platform very recently. So we received over, and I want to make sure I get this number right. I think it was about 450 applications for the digital assets funnel. So that's what, there's obviously a clear focus on that from our side as well. And I think that the message is out there as well. And that's resonated quite nicely with the kind of the digital assets players globally as well. So we'll have more information about that once we select our next cohort. So you'll definitely see a lot more traction on that side.
All right, we will leave it there. Good to talk to you and safe travels to Amsterdam.
Always good to talk to you. Thank you very much, Kelsey. Great to see you.
That's all for today. If you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe wherever you get your audio content. All that's left is to thank my production team and you for listening.